Hey everyone, and welcome to day 189 of Bible 365. I am Kathy Carter, I'm your host, and we are reading through the Bible in 365 days. I'm sharing my thoughts with you. I'm giving some testimony, some personal stories that have anything to do with what we're reading, and I am hoping that you read along and then you join me in this reading. So today is July 7th. I looked down at my notes, say June 7th, 6-7, and that's wrong. It's 7-7, so July 7th. Our reading is Psalms 92 through 97. So I'm looking at myself in this camera and I realize that I look like a Harry Potter character. I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to post that as a picture. And just if anyone is a nerd like me and you're wondering, I am in the Slytherin house. So if you've ever done those tests, I haven't done it in a while. I probably haven't done it in like 5 years, but like 5 years ago, I was 100% Slytherin house. And so everyone else in my house was, actually, we were all mixed up. We were Gryffindor, Slytherin, and Hufflepuff. Oh, and Ravenclaw. So we were kind of all over the place, and there's 5 of us. But anyway, so that's not what I look like. I feel like I look like a Gryffindor character, but nevertheless, I'm coming to you and we are reading the Bible. We are in the book of Psalms. So for those of you who are wondering, so if you did your reading, which I really hope that you did, if you didn't, whatever, you're just listening along, that's amazing. But if you did your reading, we're in these like mid Psalms, we're in like Psalm 90-ish, and you're wondering who the author is. We don't know. If you're wondering what time period in which they were written, we don't know. So what we do know, and what I can say for certainty, is it was written by somebody who loves the Lord. So it was probably written by, I think that they were not written by David. And the reason I think that they were not written by David was because David seemed to sign all of his Psalms. And so, yes, they had a rhythm, which is, I think, one of the things that we can understand, that David's Psalms all had this like rhythm and tempo, and like he spoke the way he spoke. And these don't seem to have that as much, but they do have a little bit of it. But he would say, this is a Psalm of David, right? So we would know that it was a Psalm of David's. So these are not necessarily the sons of Korah, because they were also marked as the sons of Korah. So maybe these were some prophets who wrote some songs or some Psalms. Maybe these were Levites, right? Like it could have been many different people. And whatever it was written in such a way that it was deemed that they were the right people to write these, and they were worthy enough to go in the book of the Psalms for people to repeat over and over and over again, because these are things about the Lord, right? So time period, again, we're not necessarily sure, but it's probably after David. Maybe it's in the time of Hezekiah, which is historically where we are. We're reading, if you guys are reading along with me, which is hundreds and hundreds of years after, about close to 200 years after King David. And many things have happened in the kingdom, and Hezekiah is trying to bring everybody back into the Lord. So he is rebuilding the temple, and he is bringing all the Levites back and making this their sole profession, and he's bringing all the musicians back. So they could have wrote this at the time, or they could have found old ones that they're just compiling and bringing back in. We're not 100% sure. The good news is that it doesn't necessarily matter, right? So the truth of these are the truth, and it doesn't necessarily matter the time period in which they put them in. If we're wondering what Psalms are, so if you've never been here with me before and you've never read through a Psalm, you don't know what a Psalm is, these are poems, lyrics to music, teachings in poetry form. So these are things that they would give to the people. And so they could have been singing them in the temple, right? So you could come into the temple and you can hear them singing and worshiping. These could be teachings that they were teaching. These could be prayers that they were doing inside the temple. These are probably things that they would have memorized. And because not everybody was reading, right? Paper wasn't then like it is now, where it's easily accessible to get them. Everything was written in these long scrolls. And so they would have to read and they'd have to memorize them. So there's a good chance that people memorize these Psalms, because they would go in and they would hear them and they would sing them. And so they would memorize these Psalms, and then these would be the Psalms that they would bring to their families, or that they would sing in time of need, or that they would remember, or that they would pray at night with their family, right? Those kind, or on the Sabbath, right? All the festivals and things like that. That's likely what they were. So that's what we're going to focus on today. It is only the Psalms today. So we only have Psalms. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually group these first two together. So I'm going to try and just really go with the basics. So again, we are in Psalms 92 through 97. And 92 and 93, they all have a good purpose. So I'm just going to go with 92. 92, I feel like the general consensus of what 92 is we are giving praise to the Lord because God has given us everlasting life. And so because of these good things, the Lord has given everlasting life. And so I'm just going to kind of hit on a couple of these things. It says it's good to praise the Lord, verse 1, and make music to your name, O Most High. So they're lifting and they're honoring the Lord, remembering who he is, right? Proclaiming your love in the morning, so shouting it out, essentially. And then in your faithfulness at night. So proclaiming your love in the morning and your faithfulness at night. And I want to come back to this. So it says, for you make me glad by your deeds, Lord. And I'm proclaiming this because the Lord makes this psalmist happy by what the Lord has done, right? And it says, we're not really, sure why the wicked, right, thrive. Like it looks like in some ways the wicked thrive. And that's not always true of the righteous, right? It's not like good always wins and evil always dies, right? But the reality is that in the end, good will prevail. So it says in verse 7 that though the wicked spring up like grass and all evildoers flourish, which is kind of on this time here on earth, we can see that happening. If you're ever wondering, are they the wicked because great things seem to be coming to them? There's still righteousness and wickedness, and it has very little to do with how much money you make or how much power you have. It says they will be destroyed forever. So for all time, forever. So what does that mean? Then it says, but you, Lord, so these wicked people are going to be destroyed forever, but you, Lord, are going to be exalted forever. So you're going to be lifted up. So there's this idea of forever, right? So this idea of sort of like for eternity. Then in verse 12, it says in verse 9, for surely your enemies will perish, right? And then in verse 12, it says, but the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will flourish in the courts of our Lord. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him. So some of the questions that I have, right? So that's the gist of like, we're praising him because the Lord endures forever. We will endure with the Lord forever, and the wicked will perish forever, right? So there's this, we recognize in this psalm, there's a separation sort of between good and evil, not necessarily here on earth, but for eternity. But, and I'm saying a but because I think that's true, right? It says in here, planted in the house of the Lord, they will flourish in the courts of our God, which I feel like possibly the courts of our God is future tense, right? I don't necessarily know if the courts of our God are here or not on the earth. But it also says they will bear fruit in old age. So is that literal or figurative, right? In living forever, is there old age? Or is he talking about a time here on earth? Or is he figuratively using the time of old age for like long lasting, right? They're going to continue in God's courts. They're going to continue to bear fruit long until, right? Living a long time. This is the promise to them though, which is great because then they're going to bear fruit and good things are going to happen. And then the wicked are going to perish forever, right? So this is why we exalt the Lord. So the one thing that I wanted to know that's like a personal note for me is in verse 3 where it says proclaiming your love in the morning and your faithfulness at night. So I have this really personal thing where like I am in and around Christians all the time, and I feel like that's all we talk about. I feel like really all we talk about is how much the Lord loves us. I feel like so much of our music is about like, oh, the Lord, the good news, Lord loves you, Lord loves you, Lord loves you. And then all we sing about is his faithfulness to us, right? Oh, the Lord is faithful to me. The Lord is faithful to me, right? And we're like lifting our hands, the Lord is faithful to me. And in some ways it irks me because I think we forget that we bear this responsibility. And so in some ways it kind of irks at me that we sit on grace and love and faithfulness. Like, good, God is faithful to you. I'm not faithful to God, but God's faithful to me, right? And so that's a personal stronghold. Maybe that's an issue I take. Saying that, reading it here really kind of grabs me in the heart to recognize that we do need to recognize that the Lord loves us, right? And I proclaim about his love. So that means I am shouting about how much he loves me. in my faithfulness to him, right? Like I recognize, like I love him, I worship him, I exalt him, I put him on high. The Lord loves me so much that he allows me to come and do that, right? And he's faithful to me as one who follows in his righteousness. He's faithful to do the things that he promised, which is destroying the evil and the wicked forever and flourishing the righteous. So it's in some ways a condemnation on me that when I hear those things, not to get like sort of all twisted and in a bunch about, well, he loves you, but right. But the truth is he just loves you, right? Like he loves his people so much that and by the way, he created all of us, right? And so he loves us so much that he consistently shows himself to us and he makes himself visible and understandable to us. So for those of you who are listening who sort of lean on that, right, and need that there is truth to that, that he does love you, right? And I'm going to say that it's important that you are not sitting in the tribe of the wickedness, right? That you're sitting in the tribe of the faithful, because then he is faithful to you. He's faithful to those when we turn towards him, right? All right, moving on to 93. I feel the main message in 93 is that the Lord is king. It says that he's reigned, he reigns, he's robed in majesty. Without a visual of him, I feel like sometimes it's hard for us to remember that he rules over all of the earth. Nothing happens outside of his purview. So nothing happens in a way that we can't know that God knows it's happening. And that's what right? The kingdom is his. The people are all his. He does with his people as he chooses, and he is king over all. And so that's not something I want to forget, even to the point where it says, you are from all eternity. So there's this additional recognition of the greatness of him. We are not from all eternity. We were born and we are going to die. Now, for those of us who follow him and are righteous in his sight, we will live with him for eternity, right? Just like he says earlier, it says that we're going to live with him for eternity. But we were born, and we were born from human parents. God was not. God was from all eternity. So we don't know. He didn't have a beginning. He just was. And then, of course, his statutes stand firm. Next one is in Psalm 94. This is about God making judgments. So I think a lot of these Psalms are just trying to teach you who God is. So God is the one that makes judgments. And we hear this a lot. God will not judge. And so I'm just going to kind of go over some of the Psalm, right? The Lord is a God who avenges. So who seeks vengeance on those who are against him. It says, rise up, judge of the earth, right? He's doing all of the earth. How long are the wicked going to be jubilant? So the psalmist is questioning God. Please rise up and judge the earth. There's a lot of wickedness happening here. They do these evil things. They crush your people. And then in verse 8, it says, take notice. So I don't think he's talking to God here. I think the psalmist is talking to humans. Take notice, you senseless ones, among the people. I think these are the people of Israel. So there's this idea that, and we see it later as well. There's this idea that just because you're one of his chosen people, right? And this is the way I look at it. Just because you're one of his chosen people of Israel, that does not keep you a place with him for eternity. Your place with him for eternity is your faithfulness in him, your following of him. And so he's talking to his people, this psalmist. Take notice, senseless ones. When will you become wise? Does he who fashioned the ear not hear? So, hey, recognize God here, right? The Lord knows all human plans. He knows they are futile. So we're doing all this stuff in our own strength. Blessed is the one you discipline. So, and now he's talking to the Lord. Blessed is the one that you discipline, Lord. You grant them relief from days of trouble until a pit is dug for the wicked. So he's calling the senseless people to be on the side of the righteous, right? Right now, they're very likely on the side of the wicked, and to be on the side of the righteous. And if they're being disciplined right now because those wicked are living, if they're being disciplined right now, you're blessed for that, because that's coming from the Lord. And then it says, who will rise up for me against the wicked? So the psalmist is calling out. And then in the end, in verse 23, he says, he will repay them for their sins and destroy them for their wickedness. The Lord our God will destroy them. The psalmist is putting all of the power in God's hands. He's not turning away, right? He's even calling the people to back to the Lord. Like, the Lord is the one who knows this. The Lord is the one who does this. The Lord is the ultimate judge in all things. What side are you going to be judged on? Are you going to be judged on the side where you are with the Lord, or are you going to be judged on the side that is against the Lord, that's turning to your own ways or turning to other gods, which we're going to hear about other idols soon? So it's a cry out to you as I got this little bug flying around. It's a cry. He's like kind of hanging on my elbow. It's a cry out to you, listener, right? Whoever's listening and whoever, like, where are you in your walk with the Lord? And this might be the day, right? Like, this might be the one thing that you needed to hear. Come back, you senseless people. If you call the Lord your righteous one, he's the one to judge. Stop making judgments on the earth, right? Stop doing what you believe is right by condemning other people, or by making choices that have nothing to do with God, right? You need to let all of that sit with him. Let him do the work. Be in prayer to him. He's the one that does all the work. He's the one who has the ears to hear. So it says, does he who fashioned the ear not hear? He hears, is what's saying. Does he who formed the eye not see? So it's saying he does it. He sees it. He hears. He knows where we live right now. He knows what's happening. And what's happening right now is not pretty, right? And so he knows exactly what's going on. He hears. He sees. Is he your God or isn't he? Do you lift him up in prayer and exalt him and pray to him and ask him for things? Or do you let that go and then just, I'm going to do whatever I want on my own, by my own power? Wow. Sorry, that dog was hot. Okay. So Psalm 95, moving on. So it says, come, let us sing come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. And this to me is following the importance of following God. And so one of the things that this is how I sort of teach myself, so to speak. I ask a lot of questions. And so it says, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song. So my first question to myself was, why? Why would I do this? And so it immediately follows up and says, because for the Lord is the great God. He is the King above all gods. I've noted this before. I want to note this again. I'm not sure in which way he's using gods, right? Is it like actual supernatural beings? Is it the idea of a supernatural being, the idea of anything other than God? I'm not too sure, but he brings it up on many occasions, right? Psalmists and writers and all this kind of stuff bring it up on many occasions about other gods, but that the Lord is the God above all of those. He's the one who gives the power. He's the one still that oversees. He's still the one that created. They did not create. So if there are actual other supernatural beings, there was no creation in them, right? They may or may not have some power here on earth, but they don't have what the Lord has. They are not the ultimate judge of the earth, like we learned in the last Psalm. And it says, in his hand are the depths of the earth and the mountain peaks. So from the highest high to the lowest low, that God has all of them. This is why we sing for joy to him. The sea is his, the dry land is his. There's nothing else, right? Like everything on earth, it's the sea and it's the dry land. That's it. It's water, it's land. He owns all of it. So he, from the highest heights, from the lowest depths, from the wet to the dry, he owns every single thing that nature makes. This is why, not nature makes, God makes. This is why we sing for joy to the Lord. This is why we extol him. This is why in verse 6 we bow down in worship, right? And then it says in verse 7, it says, for he is our God and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care. Today, if only you would hear his voice, right? If only you would hear him. This is what God says. Don't harden your hearts. So this is another thing that I want to take a minute on. So I'm going to read it. Today, if only you would hear his voice, do not harden your heart, says God, as you did at Meribah, as you did that day at Massah in the wilderness where your ancestors tested me. They tried me, though they had seen what I did. For 40 years, I was angry with that generation. I said, they are a people whose hearts go astray, and they have not known my ways. So I declared an oath in my anger. they shall never enter my rest. This is what I'm saying when I say, which I mentioned earlier in the earlier psalm, this is what I say when I say, God chose this people, right? This is what I say. God chose this people, Israel. He chose them for a purpose to be his ambassadors on earth so that everyone in the entire earth knows who God is, right? So the way that they behave, the way that they speak, the way that they, right? And so he created all these laws in order for them to be the people of the Lord Almighty, no beginning, no end, right? From eternity, which means there was no beginning for him, reigning forever and ever and ever, which means there's no end to him. He created this people, or he saved this people from Egypt in order for them to represent him on earth. Well, guess what? They didn't. They didn't. And so because they didn't, so that 40 years, this is talking about the Exodus, when they travel 40 years, because when they started traveling there, they complained. When they went into the land that God gave them, they complained, oh, it's too scary. We can't go in there. We don't trust you, God, right? It's essentially what they said. We don't trust. I know you said you're going to give us that land, but we're really scared. Those people are really big and we don't trust that you're going to give it to us. And so what they did was so instead they turned away from him. And so he made them roam for 40 years. Well, he said, they shall never enter my rest, God's rest. They shall never enter God's rest. Does this mean they will not sit with God for eternity? I'm going to suggest that it does, right? It's a big one because they're his chosen people. So then what does that mean, right? To me, it means faithfulness is everything. Faithfulness is the thing. It is the most important thing, because there were people that were living in Israel that were not his chosen people. He talks about the foreigners all the time. In some of the Psalms, he talks about the foreigners. Any of the foreigners that reside with you, treat them like you would treat everybody else, right? These weren't people that God chose, plucked up, and saved from the rest of the world. But what they were is they were faithful, and they were faithful to the Lord, right? They left whatever it was that they had, and they chose to follow the Lord. They sought God out, right? God didn't necessarily save those as people, but they sought God out. And so I just cautionary tale, right? Beware, whatever it might be, like beware. If you follow. And this is why I say, when I say like that whole love and faithfulness thing, that's the kind of thing that, like, he does love you. He is faithful to you, but you must be faithful to him, because what he's faithful to is righteousness, right? And justice. Those are the things that he's faithful to. He is completely upfront with people. He doesn't mince his words. He doesn't hold back any of the truths that he has for you guys. It's just us, for all of us as those who follow him. It's in front of us. I don't want to say it's clear. I hate using it's clear, because it might look clear in my eyes and it might not look clear in your eyes. Or you might look at that same exact verse and you're like, she is so 100% wrong. Like, I can't even believe she would have said something like that. Of course, the chosen ones go to heaven, right? So this is what I see when I look at it. And so I always just, kind of call out, I'd love to hear if you guys have a different view or perspective. I'm always down with hearing you guys and what it is that you have to say. Your thoughts and ideas are important to me. I'm not closed to having discussions and conversations, because I think that is how we have a greater understanding of the Lord. All right, I kind of talked over that one, and now I'm going to move into this next Psalm. So we're to Psalm 96. We've only got two more, so I'm going to keep them short and sweet. Sing to the Lord a new song. My note to myself is, sing to the Lord. Do you? Right? This is kind of the note that I said to myself, because why are we singing to him? Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Everything, every single thing on the earth is supposed to be singing to the Lord. Sing to the Lord, praise his name, proclaim his salvation day after day. Proclaim the fact that he saved you, right? That's the most exciting thing in the world. Declare his glory among all the nations. So let everybody know, hey guys, there's this God. He's amazing. He's the most amazing thing that ever existed. His marvelous deeds among all the people. Did you see what he did? Right? Did you see the greatness that he did? Do you know that he pulled the people out of slavery and he brought them into a land that wasn't their own and he gave it to them? Those are amazing things. Did you see that he sent his son? We haven't gotten there yet, but we will eventually get there. So these are the things that we're proclaiming to the Lord, the things that we know about him to be true. We're telling everybody, and we're doing this. Why? Verse 4, because great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. All the gods of the nations, and here we go about these gods again. All the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord, this one, made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before him. Strength and glory are his sanctuary. ascribe to the Lord, and I had to look this up. Uh, Ascribing is like telling people that there is this quality in a person. So like you're giving this quality to this person. So you would say, um, my friend Jen is a great dancer, right? I'm ascribing a quality to a person. So I'm letting them know, I'm ascribing to her that she's a great dancer, right? And I'm ascribing to the people around me that she's a great dancer. So then everybody knows. So ascribe these things to the Lord. All you family of nations, right? Everybody is giving him glory. And then it says, worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness, tremble before him, all the earth. Every single thing is going to tremble before him. This is for people outside of Israel, inside of Israel, right? And then let the heavens rejoice. So it's everything. It is the people of Israel, his chosen people. It is the people outside of Israel, all of the nations. It is the earth. It is the heavens. It is everything is lifting and proclaiming to the Lord. Why? Because he's the one who created all of those things, right? He's the one who has glory among all the nations. He's the God of gods. Let all creation rejoice before the Lord because he's coming. He comes to judge the earth, and he's going to judge it in righteousness and faithfulness. So not only is he good and you want to follow him, right, because he has done all these amazing things, but he is also righteousness and he is just, which I've mentioned before, and he is faithful. So those are things in which we judge him as well. So I've said before, he created good. So he's the one that has created anything and everything that is good. And so when he loves you, which again, I'm going to say he loves all humans, what he's trying to do is he's trying to bring us towards him, right? He's trying to call us to him. And when you're faithful to him, right, and you follow the things that he asks you and calls you to do, there's a comfort in knowing that those things are good, right? It doesn't always feel good. And that's issue sometimes, right? Like that's the rub in some ways. In some ways it doesn't feel good. In some ways other people don't think it's good. Right? So there's judgment from other people, because that's just a reality of being a human on this earth. Is as much as we're not supposed to be judging people, there's judgment, and sometimes there's judgment among the people who don't want to be judged. Is the biggest judgment, which is kind of funny. Is it ironic? Maybe, but it's still good. And so you still settle in the fact that if you are following the Lord, it is good. And what he tells you to do is good. Even if. I feel like I use even if a while. I want to do like a big convention called even if. All right. Moving on to this last Psalm, Psalm 97. Following up on that same idea of because of God, there is good. This is sort of what I got out of this Psalm as well. The Lord reigns, verse 1, let the earth be glad. Why? Let the distant shores rejoice. So why is the earth glad? Why is the distant shore rejoicing? Again, this is the earth. Like, I probably said like a lot today. So the earth is even singing out its praises to the Lord. And we know that the earth is singing out its praises to the Lord because the earth is doing, it's still on its axis. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. There's still gravity. The sun still gets up in the morning. The moon still gets up at night, right? There's still rain. There's still snow. There's still dew. There's still plants. There's still oxygen. Did I say gravity? There's still gravity, right? Like all of these things still exist. And therefore, what we know is that it is worshiping the Lord because it's doing its job, right? The animals are doing their job. We're usually the ones that aren't doing our job. Everything else is rejoicing in the Lord. So just think about all of these things when it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. When like the trees, which one of the things that I really love looking at trees is the way in which they bow to the sun. Like my plants as they grow, some of them sort of like you can tell where the sun comes from because they're sort of like reaching in that direction. Like they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're sucking the energy out from the sun. And so when you look at that and when you see that, or when you watch a tree, like where it has this bent or whatever, you know that it's doing its job. Its job is to take from the sun, right, fill itself up, and then have whatever leaves or fruit or whatever, right, whatever that tree is made to do. If it's doing it, then you know it is worshiping the Lord because it's doing its job. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So it says fire goes before him. And then going down to verse 7, it says, all who worship images are put to shame, but those who boast in idols worship him, you guys. So you gods, all who worship images are put to shame. Those who boast in idols worship him, all you gods. So everything is worshiping the Lord. I know I've read that twice, but Zion hears and rejoices, and the villages of Judah are glad. This is another time that we talk about Zion, which again, I'm going to continue to say, I feel like is this perfect place and people on earth, right? So I feel like there's something special about what Zion is. Is it something that's slightly separate from us? I'm still working those things out, but I'm starting to think that Zion both exists and then maybe we can't quite see it yet. Maybe those who have gone before us who faithfully love the Lord, they are in Zion at this time, which is a land that is perfect. Or maybe that doesn't come until the end. But Zion, I feel like, is a place and a people that love and follow the Lord. The place does and the people do. And then it says in verse 9, for you, God, are the most high over all the earth. You are exalted far above the gods. Verse 11, light shines on the righteous and joy on the upright in heart. This is what we come to find when we follow the Lord, right? Light will shine on us and joy will be in our hearts. And then we finish with rejoice in the Lord, you who are righteous, and praise his holy name. And my final note to myself was, let this be your life. Let this fill you. Let the Lord do what he wants to do in you. Be the tree that's doing what it's supposed to do. Be the bird that goes back to the nest when it's hungry and it's supposed to, right? And then goes out and pushes the little bird off and the bird flies away, right? Like be that. Function in a way that God has designed you. And you will find joy. It won't always be the best, but you will find joy and light will shine on you. And that is a blessing according to God. There it is, finishing up for today. That was our last Psalm. So Psalm 97. We do have more Psalms, more to come, more to come. Don't give up on me. I ask you guys this all the time. I know this is rough. I know once we start going through Psalms, it gets a little bit challenging, but we're going to hit back into some history in about a week, and we're going to get back into some prophets shouting out to the people about turning back to the Lord. So stick with these Psalms. Try and just soak in them. Maybe take one or two to pray in each night, and then come back tomorrow. As always, keep reading first. I'll see you after, and we'll share in this again tomorrow. All right. Thanks, guys.